Hey, it's your girl Go Queen with the Q Chat podcast. Thank you for tuning in to our latest episode. Before we get started, I want to give you some information on how you can grab some Q Chat merchandise. Go to www.goqueen.com and there you can purchase any Q Chat merchandise or any of my Go Love Yourself tees. So go ahead, take a look at the website and feel free to grab some merchandise today. There's something else I want to fill you guys in on. If you haven't heard, Anchor is the hottest and easiest way to make a podcast. It's the best price in the world, free. So go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And just remember, Anchor distributes your podcast to all streaming platforms. It's super simple. So go ahead and sit back and get ready to listen to the next episode of the Q Chat. But don't forget, go to www.goqueen.com and grab some merchandise. Thank you for tuning in and get ready to listen in. Go Queen! Hey, so we're recording a new episode of the Q Chat, and today's episode is entitled Go Glow, Finding Light in a Dark Time. Today I have Miss Candy Mathieu, the founder of Networking with Queens, based out of New Orleans. I'm going to go ahead and let Candy introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Candy Mathieu. I'm the owner of Networking with Queens, and Networking with Queens is the professional party for female entrepreneurs, boss chicks, and corporate queens. And we specialize in connecting, collaborating, and making money, right? Um, I'm very honored to be on this platform and to speak about what we're about to talk about because it's so important that we find ourselves, especially in times like this.
That's awesome. So how long have you been in business with Networking with Queens?
Okay, so I've actually been networking and not even realizing that I was networking for about 10 years. I actually created another business and um it was basically about women and female empowerment. It was called Ladies of Status, and it was a social and pleasure club. And that was in like 2008, 2009. And I've always done my social events, and I've always made it a point to gather women, and always with the intent of positivity and encouraging one another. So this has been a long journey, but I actually started networking with Queens last year, the actual name Networking with Queens. But this has always been a passion project for me. I just literally started thinking, now how can I make money with this? How can I support my family with it, as well as do something that I'm really truly passionate about and inspired? So
Right.
Networking with Queens, officially, it's been about a year.
Okay, perfect. So I know that you mentioned a lot about empowerment and things of that nature. So there's an awesome video that I saw that you posted during a live on your IG page a few days ago. And I know that you talked about, during this live, how during this time, some people actually may be struggling with being isolated with themselves because they may have some issues and just may not like themselves. I wanted to dive into that video further. So what makes you think that some people may have a problem just simply being alone with themselves while in isolation?
It's a lot. Like, I don't have the answer to it all, but just from a visual perspective and just some of the things that I've dealt with throughout my life, a lot of people are dealing with depression, and a lot of times we mask it by socializing. And if you don't have to be alone, then you don't have to really dig deep into what's going on in your personal life because you're preoccupied with everything that's going on in everybody else's life. So sometimes they use that as a shield, socializing. Yeah. And depression is real.
It is.
It's real. I've dealt with depression all of my life. The last couple years I really dug deep inside of like what's the stem reason for this depression, and a lot of it stems from childhood, but it's conversations that you have to have with yourself, because if you don't, there's no you can't come up with a solution if you don't sit down and like really have those discussions with yourself and iron it out. And a lot of times people are afraid, and people just don't want to deal with the tough subjects.
I'm so happy that you were transparent and honest about your struggles with depression. I feel like a lot of times within the African American community, we're not necessarily forthcoming about mental illness. I feel like we're just basically taught from children, from childhood, that we basically need to just pray it away and that's it. I think it's hard for us to admit that we do suffer from depression and we do suffer from anxiety because we just simply feel uncomfortable discussing it because of how it may be received, or we're just taught that it just doesn't exist. I definitely know, me personally, I do suffer from anxiety and occasional bouts of depression, and this situation has truly been a trigger for many of us. So, what are your ideas on coping at a time like this?
Like you said, a lot of us were taught that prayer is the be all to everything, and I truly believe that. I believe that God is the source of everything that's good, and we have to learn to tap into that. But we also have to be conscious of the things that we're doing to contribute to our happiness. Yes, it all starts with having a solid spiritual foundation, but you have to consciously work on it. You have to be actively involved. You have to take the steps. You have to write it down. You have to like really sit within yourself and say, okay, why am I having these feelings? What do they stem from? Is it my childhood? Is it what traumas uh, that I went through in my life that make me have these feelings? And you have to deal with them, and you have to take the corrective measures to change it. And it's a mind frame that you a certain mind frame that you have to have. I personally, at one point in my time, I was on medication, and it just didn't work. It made me feel like it wasn't me. And until I really sat down and like, okay, I can fix this, I can fix this. And a lot of the things that are causing my anxiety and causing my depression, if I just make the switch in my mind to change it, I can. But I have to actively have these happy thoughts. I have to actively work towards um, being better every day.
Right, right. I agree. Do you feel that right now, obviously everyone is at home? Of course, if everyone is following the rules, but one of the things I know that you mentioned in your video was some people obviously are having such a hard time being at home because they basically struggle with themselves. They don't like themselves, or they're with family, are people that they simply don't like, and they're obviously quarantining with them. So obviously the whole point of the episode is how to find light in a dark time. So let's say someone is listening and they're really having a truly rough time. They're finding some things with themselves that they struggle with. um, how do you feel like, what are your tips, basically, I should say, on how they can deal with it? Because right now, of course, the mask is off. People are seeing more of themselves than they may not have been able to deal with. So what's your suggestions on just how to cope?
I have this conversation at home with my husband and my son. Uh, every every situation is different, and like the more drastic situations where you're being molested, or you're being physically abused, I'm no psychologist, I can't really touch on it. But for me, in personal situations where you don't always like the people that you're in the house with, I have a 17-year-old son, and he has 17-year-old mood swings. And then
Right,
me and
right.
I've been married for this year will be 14 years. We've been together for 16 years. So you don't always like the person who you're in the house with. But one of the things that I find is helpful, always try to find the good in that person. Always try and find something about that person that makes you smile. It's something about that person that makes you happy. Because when you focus on the positive aspects of the people who you're around, it's much harder to dwell.
Now, I know obviously you mentioned that you're an entrepreneur. So, I've had a lot of entrepreneurs on the show. I'm one myself. So, what's some suggestions you may have for the entrepreneurs right now? Obviously, they have more time to focus on expanding or just some steps that they can utilize once this is over as well. So, what are your tips for the entrepreneurs right now that are at home right now? Obviously, we've all dealt with some setbacks because of this. So, what's your take on what this time can do for the entrepreneurs and how we can actually use this time to our advantage?
Okay, so for me personally, I had an event that was actually supposed to be this week on the 25th, and it was the Women Talk Big Money. So I had this event planned, and obviously we all were going to be gathering, but things happen, right? You just have to roll with the punches. So instead of getting down about it, instead of looking at it like why this is happening and why me, look at the bright side of it. How can you make the event that you were going to do better? What can you add to, because now you have more time to plan. What can you do to add different elements to make it a better experience when you do have the opportunity to meet together? And another thing that I saw on social media about entrepreneurs and people in business was that if you don't come out with a business plan or you don't come out a better person than you went in, then that means that you're lazy. That is absolutely not the truth. As entrepreneurs, we're always on the go. We're always in productive mode. We're always trying to think of the next big thing. Sometimes it's okay to just chill out, relax, and don't force it. Allow it to come to you naturally. Because a lot of times we get in this space where we feel like we have to produce something. Maybe it's time to just relax and enjoy the time with your family. And if something does come out of it, obviously act on it and move on it and pursue it. But don't feel like you have to um, be with the in crowd and you have to have a new business goal. Continue doing what you were doing because small steps lead to big steps as well.
I agree, and I'm glad you said that because I think on the flip side, a lot of people to put a lot of pressure on themselves. Of course, there's this meme floating around saying, oh, well, if you haven't utilized this time to come out with a new skill or a small business, that means you're lazy and undedicated, which I completely disagree with. And I feel like this time period, if anything, has just showed us that sometimes we do need to slow down. So I'm glad that you did say that so people just know that they don't have to put this unbelievable pressure upon themselves.
And that's another level of depression. If I can't come up with a business plan, then that must mean that I'm a terrible entrepreneur, or that must mean that I'm not a busy entrepreneur. Busy work is not always productive work. And
Mm-hmm.
social media will have us thinking, like the worst of ourselves. Social media is an
Right.
amazing tool because obviously it connects like minds like you and myself, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it can also be negative, and sometimes you have to pull away from social media and you have to take a break. So when you do come back from quarantine, you're ready to hit the streets running. You're ready to take your business on head on because you had a moment to breathe and to process what it is you want to do with your business. If you come out with an amazing idea or a new business strategy, that's great. And we're going to cheer you on. But if you don't, that's okay as well.
And we'll still cheer you on because you took care of yourself. And I do agree, social media is a double edged sword. I do love connecting with people and networking with people. Instagram, I actually truly, truly love. But for some reason, me personally, I'm not a fan of Facebook. And I think sometimes social media can be a trigger for some people because they're too busy comparing and contrasting and they're looking at these false narratives and thinking, oh my God, I have to fit this standard, from what they're seeing on social media. And I think it's a total mind trap.
And another thing too,
Right.
you have to be. That's another thing, like with our mental state. You have to watch the people who you follow, and even the people who follow
Mm-hmm.
you follow you, because a lot of times the people who follow you, they'll pop up on your timeline as well. And I had this
Right.
conversation with someone before, and I'm like, I'm turning, look, if you're posting things that is not in alignment with where my mental state and my spiritual state needs to be, I am unfollowing your butt, and I might even block you, because you have to be
Right.
actively pursuing happiness.
Right. Literally, after this whole experience, I don't want to dwell too much on the virus itself, but it's definitely affected my family personally. But I definitely had to unfollow a lot of people off of Facebook because their posts were so negative, and it just was really sad and disappointing just to see how some people were just posting things that were not serving any purpose. And I just was like, I just can't really do it anymore. So like I
People
literally
will
had
project
to
their
follow that.
energy onto you if you allow it. So you have to block it, because people definitely would project their energy on you, and we just have to always be conscious of that we're of our energy, and we're in control of who and what we allow in our space. And we're ultimately like prayer, and then us, God, and then us. That's who's in control.
It's really surprising though at the end of the day. I think we have learned a lot about each other. We learned a lot about ourselves, of course, but I don't know. I think a lot has changed, and some people I considered friends, I kind of looked at them differently after this experience, or I guess I should say during this experience, just because just the negativity that I saw a lot of people were spewing out, it was really hard to digest.
And then and sometimes people are not aware of the things that they're doing. Like for instance, my mom has a few underlying health issues. Like she has lupus, she's borderline diabetic, she has a few things. So me and my mom, like, that's my best friend. We're always doing everything together. But because of this, I don't have COVID, but I've been staying away from it because I just do not want to in no way like bring any harm towards her. So she's been in complete isolation, and she's married, and her
Right.
husband works, and he's in and out of the house, but she's pretty much by herself. And
Mm-hmm.
she'll go on Facebook, she'll go on social media, but that should not be the first thing that somebody sees, something negative when they go on there, because in
Right.
her specific case, she needs things that's going to keep her uplifted. Nobody wants to come on
Mm-hmm.
social media and see something negative, and and it's hard
Right.
to stay away from it, because what else we doing?
That was my thing because, my elderly parents actually had it. My mom was just released from the hospital. She's still, struggling, unfortunately, because of the situation. And, my mind's been consumed with a lot. And who wants to see a bunch of negative things? You know, I was just at the point where, and yeah, let's just say, obviously social media is a part of our lives. I mean, it's just something that people do normally, but, you know, it's not something that I want to go and just see a bunch of negative things. Like, we're all dealing with our own personal things, and that's just not what someone wants to see. No one wants to see anything negative.
What though? What I'm learning, like, I'm an Instagrammer. Like, I love Instagram. I actually started out on Facebook, as all of us did. Um, but because I don't use it, I when you don't use it, you lose it. So I don't know how to really navigate through Facebook, but I'm learning that a lot of people, business and entrepreneur people, are actually on Facebook. And whenever I'm like giving out my course or I'm networking with people, a lot of the entrepreneurs are on Facebook, and they're like, that's the source, Facebook. Especially if you want to connect with a more mature audience. Facebook is the way to go.
Mm.
So I was really thinking about going on there, and I have my page, and I'll post things on there because it goes directly from my Instagram to Facebook, but I don't really engage. But I really was thinking about like really getting in there and learning how to engage on there. But instead of trying to contact friends and family, What about just focusing strictly on business professionals?
And I've said it a lot on this show. I'm not a fan of Facebook. My only use of Facebook really is the messenger. I do love the fun part of it, going online and maybe seeing the funny jokes, things of that nature. But I definitely had to unfollow a lot of people that were just spitting a lot of negativity. I just couldn't take it. It just was too much to consume. Like, the only use I have for it is the messenger, and just to see things that's going to make me laugh or just take my mind off of it. But some people just had different agendas.
Because like what they say about wherever our energy goes, that's where our attention flows, or wherever our attention goes, that's where our energy flows. And that's really true. If you change the narrative and start from scratch, business side, maybe it'll be a different result. Again, I don't know because I'm no Facebook expert.
And I may have to get into that mind frame because I'm like you. I just strictly do Instagram. I've met a lot of people networking wise on Instagram. Like, it's been really amazing. Um, like, I have 3 Instagram pages. I have my personal, I have the podcast, and I have the one for my business. And, I really like it. But for some reason with Facebook, I don't know. I just have a distrust of it for some reason. I don't know. I just feel more comfortable with Instagram. I need to maybe just get into the whole thought of just using it solely for that purpose for business, but just, I don't know, something about Facebook I just don't like.
Gonna have to work on the Facebook. Maybe that's a challenge that
Right.
we're gonna have to do with each other. Let's see how we can work on Facebook and implement Facebook inside our business, not the personal, but inside our business, both of us.
Because I just can't get into it, and I just may need some motivation. So I'm going back to Go Glow, Finding Light in a Dark Time. So let's go into self-care. So what's your thoughts on how important self-care is, because that's another piece of just finding your light and just not making this time so dark. What are your thoughts on self-care and just how important it is?
Self-care is essential. It's so important. If I'm honest, like I've been working like a workaholic for like the last 2 years. A lot of transition happened in my personal life within the last 2 years, and it made me have to be more productive. Really been working nonstop. So I wasn't doing any self-care regimens. It just was work, 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 produce, take care of the family. And I wasn't doing any self-care regimens. So when this happened, it was like an open invitation to just relax. I've been enjoying my family time. And for me, the most important thing in life for me is my family. My husband and my son, my mom, my cousin, um, and my friends. And I really was out of touch with them. So for me, this has been a great opportunity to get back in touch with my family and my friends and have those conversations that make you laugh, which is the ultimate best form of self-care is laughter. Sitting down, just indulging in TV. At one point in my life, I would be able to tell you everything about what was going on with housewives, this, that, and the other. And even though it's a guilty pleasure, it's something that I enjoy. But once I started working like crazy, TV was the last thing that was on my mind, or just to sit down and relax, put my feet up, eat something that I ain't got no business eating, and watch TV. I literally put on about a good 10 pounds. So I had to I had to
Mm-hmm.
start working out a couple days ago because I've literally just been on relax and chill mode, and it was needed. I can't stress that enough how
Right.
it was needed. I drink my tea every day. I watch my shows. I'm scrolling on Instagram. I'm laughing. We're playing games like Monopoly. I ain't played Monopoly in years, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a moment of laughter. It was a moment of being able to spend time with my family, and for me, that's important. My son has this little massager thing, honey. I've been using it up like crazy. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing. How about you?
I've definitely tried to incorporate self care before this time. I definitely was in the mode too before this time where I was turning into a workaholic for sure. This isn't my first business, but this is my first business kind of going into retail. The first one was event planning, and that's totally different from trying to sell apparel. So I know, like, with this one, I was just at the point where I felt like I was working 24/7. If I wasn't asleep, I was working. And then, throwing in the podcast, things of that nature. I mean, I started the podcast last August of 2019. And by January of 2020, I only had like maybe 3-4 episodes. But from January to currently, I recorded over 20 episodes. So, I mean, I put a lot of work just into building this brand. So I know self-care for sure I had just put on a back burner. So I know, like, when this first happened, you know, I just felt like I was in a state of shock, I guess, at first. Like, I obviously have asthma, as I've mentioned in past episodes, and just finding out that this virus attacks the respiratory system, it put me in a state of panic for sure. I was very afraid to just do anything essential. It just did a toll on me mentally. So, like, for a few weeks, I just really needed to just stop the world because I'm like, I need to process what's happening, just seeing what was going on, with my family, just seeing friends lose people, you know. So, I definitely went through a few weeks of depression, where I just really couldn't focus. So, finally, maybe a week or two ago, I finally was like, okay, I have to get out of this, you know, and be positive and just step out of my feelings. So currently, yeah, I finally got back into the mode of self care, and it is extremely important because if you don't do that, like, you really can fall into a deep rut and you really can fall into a deep depression.
In a minute, you think like we're in control of our minds and what we think, but and this is just my spiritual. I think God is ultimately in control of everything, but everything happens for a reason. In the minute that you think that you're in control of the things that's around you, is the minute God say, "Let me show you something."
For me, and I told this to a few people these past few weeks, I think the whole situation, honestly, is completely biblical because he completely stopped everything. So, like, I don't know what other people may believe in, but, whatever you believe in, there's definitely a higher power. And I just feel like a higher power for sure put a stop to the whole world. It doesn't matter your demographic, your social class, anything. We've all been frozen. And I think that's why we connected with a lot of these celebrities, having their lives. Because it's like, okay, like I said, it doesn't matter the demographic, nothing. It's like everyone else is in the same situation that we're in. And I can't really think of another situation where we all were affected to this level. And, like, the world has stopped.
To breathe, for everybody to breathe. And now listen, I'm also like a slight conspiracy theorist. So I think that the government has their hands intertwined in this all kinds of ways. But again, I think that God has the higher power. And it's always how you look at things and what are your perspectives? How can you make it work for you? Whatever is going on around you, how can you make it work for you? But I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. I think the government pulling a few little strings in this orchestrated situation.
Yeah, well, most definitely. I definitely feel the government has some type of hand in this. It's all intertwined. For sure. I put my conspiracy theorist hat on several times, especially seeing after everything got super, like how severe things turned. So, just rounding out the show, the whole topic of Go Glow, finding light in a dark time, because I definitely wanted to keep this as bright and positive as possible. So, how can we also be a light for others? So, how can we also be a light in a dark time for others? I mean, just like right now, I feel like a lot of people have connected to people that we haven't spoken to in a long time, and vice versa. We've also seen some people who we thought maybe were our friends. Yeah, we don't necessarily connect with them, in such a bleak, period. So, how can we also find a way to be a light for others?
Like a lot of times we get on the phone and then we want to talk COVID talk, but instead of focusing on COVID, how about we just bring up some of our fun times and let's think about what we're gonna do the next time we meet, and the next time when we're gonna have this girls outing, all of the positive things that's gonna come out of that, instead of focusing solely on negativity. It's just small things that, like, just changing the direction of the conversation. It's just small things like that that goes a long way.
It is. It's really the little things. Like, I did a post a few weeks ago, and because I kind of felt like I was getting a lot of people that were slightly condescending, when I would be really nervous about just doing anything minor, just doing anything essential, running to the store for a minute. I just felt like people were, well, not everyone, but some people were very condescending about just how I felt, you know. And so I did a post a few weeks ago on Facebook, ironically, and I had posted like a picture of like the two inhalers that I use and also the meds that I have to take. And someone from high school that I haven't spoken to since 1995, like, she inboxed me because she also has asthma, and we connected. And so now we check in with each other regularly. So, it's little things like that that really truly make a difference.
Some of us may have people in our lives who are a constant person in our lives, but a lot of people don't have people they can call and people they can look to for encouragement. So whenever you have the opportunity to maybe post something positive, post it, or post something funny, post it. Send that message to somebody, and reach out to people who you don't know, and the people who you haven't talked to for years. And I get laughed at a lot with my family and my friends and stuff, because they say how I always comment on people's posts, or I'm always reaching out to somebody on social media. But that's what it's for. Let's be social. It's okay to be social.
It goes a long way to be positive, and I think if anything, this time has really proven that. I think just being positive is really underestimated, and right now I think we truly see it. Like, just giving a little positive comment under someone's post may brighten someone's day more than they realize it. Even with the podcast, I've had people inbox me and say, "Oh, this particular episode really touched me," and it's really inspired me. Like, one time I got an inbox and I was almost in tears because I was so moved that someone just said how much it touched them. So, we underestimate the power that we have to inspire people.
And the only thing that drives out darkness is light. That's a fact.
So, two more things I want to throw out before we wrap it up. Just like we discussed, being a light for others. And of course, the whole episode is about finding a light in a dark time. So, I just want to go back to that again. So, what do you think would truly be the best thing for people to look for to be a light in a dark time? And not just even during this particular time, but something to take away that we can utilize once this time finally does end. What is the best way that you truly ultimately think is the best way to find a light in a dark time? So that, not necessarily for the pandemic, but just no matter what you're dealing with, if you have health issues or problems, in a relationship, or just problems in your personal life, or dealing with depression, just what can we do just to have some positivity and find light in a dark time just for our life in general?
Gratitude, always finding something to be grateful for. Um, there's this song by Shaggy. which is one of my very favorite songs. No matter what you're going through, somebody's always got it worse than you. Always find gratitude. If you can find gratitude on a daily basis, it's something that is going to motivate you because, yeah, you may be having health issues, but you got another opportunity to be here when somebody else didn't. You may be having financial difficulties, but guess what? God feeds the birds, the doggone pigeons, the rats and rodents. You're gonna eat, and there's somebody who woke up who didn't have a meal. So you always find gratitude, no matter how small it is. If it's the shirt on your back, just find gratitude. And I always used to do this little thing with my son when I used to bring him to school in the morning. Every morning before school, we would say a prayer and we would start with the gratitude. What are you grateful for? And it could be something as simple as I'm grateful for having toothpaste to brush my teeth this morning. I'm grateful for the lights flicking on. When you find gratitude, it changes your attitude. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's the truth.
And this wraps up part one of the episode of Go Glow with Miss Candy Matthew. After we finished this particular part of the interview, she had some awesome questions, and I'm actually going to publish that in a second episode, a bonus episode, and I will be releasing that shortly. So just to wrap up what Candy and I discussed, I know like right now time seems extremely dark. God knows I'm experiencing a lot with this situation, but I just want to encourage people, as I try to encourage people with all the episodes, just love yourself and just understand that you are important and you do serve a purpose, whether that is finding how to be a light with other people and just truly inspiring them, or just simply your purpose is just being present, just getting up every morning and just being present in someone's life or just being present in this universe. You do serve a purpose. So just remember, I know times are rough, but just go glow. Use your tools. Use what's in your heart to glow and be bright and shine. And we all will get past this. But just remember to go glow and to go love yourself. Thank you.